I think I didn't do anything wrong, just looked out for what I deserved. So when I got served those divorce papers at my office, right after what happened with his best friend, I was honestly shocked he finally did something about it. I always thought he'd be too weak to fight back. The whole thing started over dinner on a Tuesday night. Evan was telling me about his day fixing computers at the office, going on about some server crash like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. I watched him gesture with his fork, sauce dripping back onto his plate, and felt that familiar wave of disappointment wash over me. "You know what your problem is?" I said, cutting him off mid-sentence. "You get excited about the wrong things. No wonder you're still doing tech support at 36. Evan's face fell, but he just nodded and went back to eating. That passive acceptance made my skin crawl. A real man would have defended himself, would have shown some fire. Instead, he just sat there like a kicked dog. Our daughter Megan looked up from her homework at the kitchen table. "Mom, that's mean." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. It's not mean, sweetie. It's realistic. Your father needs to hear the truth sometimes. I turned back to Evan. Maybe if someone pushed you a little, you'd actually accomplish something. Later that evening, we met Brady and some friends at Murphy's Diner for what was supposed to be a casual get-together. Brady Kimball had been Evan's best friend since college. Successful, confident, everything Evan wasn't. He worked in sales and always had stories about closing big deals or impressing clients. When he walked in, wearing his tailored jacket and flashing that easy smile, I felt a flutter of something I hadn't felt with Evan in years. "So, Evan," Brady said as we settled into our booth, "how's the IT world treating you?" Before Evan could answer, I jumped in. "Oh, you know Evan, still saving the world one password reset at a time." The table laughed, and I felt a rush of satisfaction. I keep telling him he should ask for a promotion, but he's too scared they'll say no. Evan's jaw tightened. "I'm not scared, Lenore. I'm being strategic." "Strategic?" I laughed. "Is that what we're calling it? Because from where I sit, it looks like you're afraid of your own shadow." Brady shifted uncomfortably, but I caught him smirking. The other couples exchanged glances, some amused, others awkward. I didn't care. Someone needed to call Evan out on his weakness. "Maybe we should order," Evan said quietly. "See?" I gestured to the table. "This is what I mean. The moment things get real, he changes the subject. I married a man, not a mouse." The silence that followed was deafening. Evan stared at his menu like it held the secrets of the universe, his face red with embarrassment. Part of me felt bad, but mostly I felt vindicated. These people needed to see what I dealt with every day. Brady cleared his throat. "Actually, Evan's pretty good at what he does. His company would be lost without him." I waved dismissively. "Brady, you're sweet to defend him, but we all know Evan could do more if he just had some backbone. I'm not being cruel. I'm being honest." The rest of dinner passed in strained conversation. Evan barely spoke, and when he did, his voice was so quiet people had to lean in to hear him. I found myself comparing him to Brady, who commanded attention effortlessly. When Brady told a story about landing a difficult client, his whole body animated with confidence. When Evan mentioned fixing the office network, he mumbled it like an apology. On the drive home, Evan finally spoke up. "Did you have to do that in front of everyone?" "Do what?" "You know what? Embarrass me like that." I sighed dramatically. "Evan, if you feel embarrassed, maybe that's telling you something. I can't help it if the truth hurts." "The truth?" His voice cracked slightly. "The truth is that I work hard to support our family. I may not be flashy, but I'm reliable." Reliable is just another word for boring. I stared out the window at the suburban Colorado landscape rushing past. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd married someone with actual ambition. Evan went quiet again, and I knew I'd hit my mark. When we got home, Megan was already in her room with the door closed. She'd been doing that a lot lately, disappearing whenever Evan and I started talking. Kids were sensitive to these things, but she'd understand when she was older. My phone buzzed with a text as I was getting ready for bed. Brady's name lit up the screen. "You were pretty hard on him tonight. Not that he didn't deserve some of it. You're too good for that, Lenore." I smiled as I typed back. "Someone has to push him. He's lucky I put up with it." "He really is," came Brady's quick reply. "Any other woman would have moved on by now." I was still smiling when I heard Evan's voice from the hallway, talking quietly on the phone. "I know, Mom. It's getting worse. No, I don't know what to do about it. She says she's just being honest, but..." So he was running to Mommy now. Typical Evan. Instead of standing up to me, he complained to his mother. Carolyn had never liked me anyway, always acting like her precious son could do better. Well, maybe he could have, but he didn't. And now we were both stuck with the choices we'd made, except I was starting to think maybe we didn't have to be. The next few weeks fell into a familiar pattern. Evan would try to connect, suggesting date nights, bringing me coffee in the morning, asking about my day, and I'd find reasons why his efforts fell short. The coffee was too weak, the restaurant suggestions were boring, his questions felt like interrogations. Nothing he did seemed genuine anymore. It all felt like desperate attempts to fix something he'd already broken through years of mediocrity. At work, I found myself venting to my coworkers more and more. Linda from accounting would shake her head sympathetically when I described Evan's latest disappointment. "Girl, you deserve so much better," she'd say during our coffee breaks. "A woman like you shouldn't have to settle." "I know," I'd reply, feeling validated. "I just don't know what to do about it. He's not a bad person, he's just... nothing special." These conversations became a daily ritual, and I found myself embellishing stories to get better reactions. Evan's quiet consideration became, "He ignores me completely." His careful budgeting became, "He's cheap and controlling." His gentleness with Megan became, "He spoils her to make me look bad." It was during one of these venting sessions that Brady started texting me more regularly. What began as casual check-ins, "How are you holding up?" and "Hope your day is better than yesterday," gradually became more personal. He'd ask about my dreams, my frustrations, what I wanted from life. For the first time in years, someone was actually interested in me as a person, not just as Evan's wife or Megan's mother. "You're wasted in that marriage," Brady texted one afternoon. "You're intelligent, beautiful, ambitious. Evan doesn't even see what he has." I stared at the message, my heart racing. This was dangerous territory, but it felt so good to be seen, to be appreciated. "Sometimes I feel invisible in my own home," I typed back. "You could never be invisible. Any man who doesn't worship the ground you walk on is an idiot." That evening, Evan tried again. He'd picked up takeout from my favorite Thai place and set up candles in the dining room. "I thought we could have a nice dinner together," he said hopefully. "Just the two of us. Megan's at her friend's house." I looked at his earnest face, at the effort he'd made, and felt nothing but irritation. "Evan, I had a long day. I'm not really in the mood for... whatever this is." "It's just dinner, Lenore. We used to enjoy talking to each other." That was before I realized we have nothing in common. I moved past him toward the kitchen. "You can put my plate in the fridge. I'll eat later." "What's happening to us?" His voice was so quiet I almost didn't hear it. I turned around, ready to deliver another cutting remark, but something in his expression stopped me. He looked genuinely broken, like a man watching his world crumble in real time. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old affection, the connection we'd once shared. Then my phone buzzed with another text from Brady, and the moment passed. Nothing's happening to us, Evan. This is just who we really are when we stop pretending. The next day, Brady asked me to meet him for lunch. Just as friends, he said. But we both knew it was more than that. He chose a small cafe across town, somewhere we were unlikely to run into anyone we knew. "You look beautiful," he said when I arrived, standing to pull out my chair like a gentleman. Evan had stopped doing things like that years ago. We talked for 2 hours. Brady told me about his work, his travels, his dreams of starting his own company. He asked about my job, my goals, what I'd wanted to be when I was younger. When I mentioned that I'd once considered going back to school for marketing, he leaned forward with genuine interest. "You should do it," he said. "You're smart enough, driven enough. Don't let anyone hold you back." Evan thinks it's impractical. He says we can't afford it right now. Evan thinks small. He's comfortable being comfortable, but you're meant for bigger things. When he walked me to my car, Brady hesitated at my door. "Lenore, I need to say something. I've watched you in that marriage for years, and it kills me to see you settling. You deserve someone who sees your worth, who challenges you to be your best self." "Brady, I know it's complicated. Evan's my friend, and I don't want to hurt him, but I can't pretend I don't have feelings for you anymore." He leaned in and kissed me, soft and tentative at first, then with more confidence when I didn't pull away. It was everything Evan's kisses weren't: passionate, electric, alive with possibility. When we broke apart, I was breathless. "This is crazy." "Maybe, but sometimes crazy is exactly what we need." That night, Evan tried to initiate intimacy for the first time in months. As his hands moved over me with familiar gentleness, all I could think about was Brady's kiss, the way he'd made me feel desired and valuable. Evan's touch felt like an obligation, a routine we were both going through out of habit. "Is everything okay?" Evan whispered when he noticed my distraction. "I'm fine," I lied, turning away from him. "Just tired." But I wasn't tired. I was awake, more awake than I'd been in years. Brady had reminded me what it felt like to be wanted, to be pursued, to be seen as something more than a wife and mother going through the motions of domestic life. My phone lit up with a text. "Can't stop thinking about today. You're amazing, Lenore." I smiled in the darkness, careful not to wake Evan. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again, not the woman who'd settled for safety and predictability, but the woman who deserved passion and excitement and a man who appreciated what he had. Evan stirred beside me, reaching out in his sleep. His hand found my shoulder, and he pulled me closer with unconscious affection. Once, that gesture would have made me feel loved and secure. Now it felt like a chain, holding me back from the life I was meant to live. I gently moved away from his touch and closed my eyes, already planning my next meeting with Brady. Carolyn's monthly family dinner was a tradition I'd learned to endure rather than enjoy. Evan's mother had never warmed to me, maintaining polite civility while making it clear she thought her son could have done better. The feeling was mutual, but family obligations were family obligations, and Evan would have been devastated if I'd refused to attend. This particular Sunday, she'd invited Daniel Kimball as well, Brady's older brother and a longtime family friend. Daniel was quieter than Brady, more like Evan in temperament, which probably explained why Carolyn preferred him. He worked as an accountant and had the personality to match. "Lenore, you look lovely," Carolyn said when we arrived, her tone suggesting the opposite. "That's a bold choice for a family dinner." I'd worn a fitted dress that showed off my figure. Nothing inappropriate, but certainly more flattering than my usual suburban mom uniform. "Thank you, Carolyn. I thought it was time to make an effort." Megan ran ahead to hug her grandmother, and I watched Carolyn's face soften as she embraced her granddaughter. Whatever issues she had with me, she adored Megan, and the feeling was mutual. "Where's Brady tonight?" I asked Daniel as we settled in the living room. "Working late. Big client dinner. Daniel glanced at me curiously. He mentioned running into you downtown last week. My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. Oh, yes, we had lunch. It's nice to catch up with old friends. Evan looked up from his conversation with his mother. You didn't mention having lunch with Brady. It wasn't worth mentioning. Just a quick bite between errands. I turned to Daniel. How's his new apartment working out? Good, I think. He seems happy with the location. During dinner, the conversation turned to work, and I saw my opportunity. Carolyn was asking Evan about his job, nodding approvingly as he described a recent project. Her obvious pride in his mundane accomplishments irritated me. It's sweet how excited Evan gets about fixing computers, I said with a laugh. I keep telling him he should aim higher, but he's content being the office tech guy forever. The table went quiet. Carolyn's fork paused halfway to her mouth. There's nothing wrong with honest work, she said carefully. Of course not. I just think Evan has more potential than he's using. Don't you want more for yourself, honey? I turned to Evan with what I hoped looked like encouraging concern. Evan's face was red. I like my job, Lenore. It's stable, and it pays well enough. Well enough isn't great, though. Brady's always talking about his commissions, his bonuses. He's ambitious. I took a sip of wine. I admire that in a man. Brady's in sales, Daniel said uncomfortably. Different field entirely. Different mindset, too. Some men are comfortable with mediocrity. Others push themselves to excel. I reached over and patted Evan's hand condescendingly. Not everyone can be a go-getter. Carolyn set down her fork with more force than necessary. Evan has always been reliable and hard-working. Those are admirable qualities. Oh, absolutely. Reliable is wonderful. It's just not very exciting, is it? Megan had stopped eating and was staring at her plate. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut, but I couldn't stop myself. These people needed to understand what I dealt with every day. I mean, when we were dating, I thought Evan would grow into his potential, but some people are just comfortable being ordinary. I smiled at the table. I suppose that's fine if ordinary is what you want from life. Mom, Megan said quietly, can I be excused? Finish your dinner, sweetheart. I'm not hungry anymore. Carolyn stood up immediately. Of course, dear. Why don't you go watch TV in the den? Megan fled the room, and I felt a flicker of guilt, but children were resilient, and she needed to understand that life wasn't all fairy tales and happy endings. Sometimes people grew apart, and that was nobody's fault. That was unnecessary, Evan said once Megan was gone. What was unnecessary? Honesty? I'm sorry if the truth makes you uncomfortable, but someone needs to say it. Daniel cleared his throat. Maybe we should talk about something else. No, let's not change the subject. Carolyn's voice was steel. Lenore, I don't know what's gotten into you lately, but the way you speak to my son is unacceptable. Carolyn, I'm not attacking Evan. I'm trying to motivate him. A good wife should push her husband to be better. A good wife supports her husband, especially in public. Support him in what? Staying exactly the same forever? Never taking risks or chasing dreams? I laughed, but it sounded harsh, even to my ears. I have dreams too, you know. I have ambitions. But I'm stuck because he's too scared to reach for anything better. Evan stood up abruptly. I'm not scared, Lenore. I'm responsible. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I sit, responsibility looks a lot like cowardice. The words hung in the air like a slap. Evan stared at me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. For a second I thought he might finally fight back, might show some of the fire I'd been trying to provoke. Instead, he walked out of the room. Daniel excused himself shortly after, mumbling something about an early morning. Carolyn and I cleaned up in frigid silence, the only sounds the clinking of dishes and the distant murmur of the TV where Megan was hiding. I don't know what's happened to you, Carolyn said finally, but this isn't the woman Evan married. Maybe the woman Evan married was pretending to be someone she wasn't. Or maybe she's forgotten who she used to be. On the drive home, Megan sat in the back seat staring out the window while Evan gripped the steering wheel in silence. I felt like I should say something, but I wasn't sure what. I'd only been honest about our situation. If that made people uncomfortable, maybe they needed to examine why the truth was so hard to hear. My phone buzzed with a text from Brady. Daniel said dinner was tense tonight. You okay? I glanced at Evan, but he was focused on the road. Just family drama. Nothing I can't handle. You deserve better than people who don't appreciate you. I know, I typed back, smiling despite the awkward silence in the car. Want to talk about it? I'm free tomorrow afternoon. I hesitated for only a moment. Yes, I'd like that. When we got home, Megan went straight to her room without saying goodnight. Evan disappeared into his home office, probably to call his mother and rehash the evening's events. I poured myself a glass of wine and settled on the couch, already looking forward to seeing Brady tomorrow. My phone buzzed again. You're too good for all of them, Lenore. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. For the first time all evening, I felt understood. Brady saw what the others couldn't. That I was wasted in this life, that I deserved someone who appreciated my worth instead of taking me for granted. From Megan's room, I could hear her talking quietly on the phone, probably to one of her friends. From the office came the low murmur of Evan's voice, no doubt complaining to his mother about his terrible wife. Let them talk. Tomorrow, I'd be with someone who actually valued me, someone who saw my potential instead of trying to keep me small and quiet and grateful for scraps. I raised my wine glass in a silent toast to new possibilities, to finally putting myself first for once in my life. Brady's apartment was everything Evans wasn't. Modern, sophisticated, with clean lines and expensive furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. When he opened the door, wearing a crisp button-down and dark jeans, I felt that familiar flutter of attraction mixed with validation. This was what a successful man looked like. You look incredible, he said, stepping aside to let me in. Wine? Please. I accepted the glass of red he offered, noting it was a brand I'd never heard of, but that probably cost more than Evan spent on groceries in a week. Your place is beautiful. Thanks. I finally have it the way I want it. He gestured to the leather sofa. Make yourself comfortable. We settled next to each other, closer than friends, but not quite touching. The afternoon light streaming through his floor-to-ceiling windows made everything feel cinematic, like we were starring in our own romantic drama. So tell me about last night, Brady said. Daniel said things got heated. I sighed dramatically. Your brother was being diplomatic. It was awful. Carolyn attacked me for being honest about Evan's lack of ambition, and he just sat there like a bump on a log. Again. What did you say? Nothing that wasn't true. I pointed out that he's comfortable being mediocre, that he doesn't push himself. Instead of taking it as constructive criticism, everyone acted like I was being cruel. Brady moved closer, his hand finding mine. You weren't being cruel. You were being real. That's what I admire about you, Lenore. You don't sugarcoat things. Exactly. But they want me to pretend everything's fine, to smile and nod while my life passes me by. I leaned into him slightly. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating. You don't have to suffocate. His voice was low, intimate. You have choices. Do I? We have Megan to think about, the house, everything we've built together. What you've built together isn't working. Anyone can see that. His thumb traced over my knuckles. Life is short, Lenore. You deserve to be happy. When he kissed me this time, there was no hesitation from either of us. His hands tangled in my hair, and I felt alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. This was what passion felt like. Urgent, consuming, worth the risk. Are you sure about this? He whispered against my lips. I've never been more sure of anything. What followed was everything my marriage wasn't. Where Evan was gentle and predictable, Brady was confident and exciting. Where Evan treated me like fragile porcelain, Brady treated me like a woman who knew what she wanted. For the first time in years, I felt desirable, powerful, alive. Afterward, we lay tangled in his expensive sheets, and I felt no guilt, only satisfaction and a sense of rightness I hadn't experienced in my own bedroom for longer than I could remember. This is complicated, Brady said, running his fingers through my hair. It doesn't have to be. Evan and I are basically over anyway. We're just going through the motions at this point. He's still my best friend, Lenore. This is going to destroy him. I propped myself up on my elbow to look at him. Brady, be honest. When you look at our marriage, do you see two people who are happy together? He was quiet for a moment. No. I see you dying a slow death, and him too oblivious to notice. Exactly. So really, we're doing him a favor. He deserves someone who can be satisfied with his version of life, and I deserve someone who wants more. Someone like me? Someone exactly like you. Over the following weeks, we developed a routine. I'd meet Brady for lunch, sometimes extending into the afternoon when I could manage it. I told Evan I was working late or running errands, and he never questioned it. His trusting nature, which I'd once found endearing, now seemed pathetically naive. At home, the distance between Evan and me grew more obvious. He'd try to engage me in conversation about his day, about Megan's school activities, about weekend plans, and I'd respond with minimal interest. Why should I pretend to care about his mundane concerns when I had something real and exciting happening in my life? Mom, are you and Dad getting divorced? Megan asked one evening while I was helping her with homework. The question caught me off guard. Why would you ask that? You're always mad at him, and you're on your phone all the time now. Her young face was troubled. Sarah's parents got divorced last year, and they acted like you and Dad before it happened. Sweetie, adult relationships are complicated. Sometimes people grow in different directions. But you love Dad, right? I hesitated a moment too long. I love our family, Megan. That's what matters. It wasn't really an answer, and we both knew it. That weekend, Megan asked to stay at Carolyn's house, something she'd never requested before. I like it there, she said when Evan asked why. It's quiet. The implication stung, but I told myself children were adaptable. Once Evan and I figured out our situation, Megan would adjust. Kids were resilient. My phone rang while I was getting ready for another afternoon with Brady. Carolyn's name appeared on the screen. Lenore, we need to talk. Carolyn, I'm busy right now. I know what you're doing. My blood ran cold. I'm sorry? Megan is asking questions about divorce. Evan looks like a ghost of himself. And Daniel mentioned seeing you at that cafe downtown with Brady last week. I'm allowed to have lunch with friends. Friends don't look at each other the way you two were looking at each other. Her voice was ice cold. You're destroying my son. Your son is destroying himself with his refusal to grow up. I'm not responsible for his happiness. You took vows, Lenore. You promised to honor him. I promised to honor the man I thought he was. Turns out I was wrong about who that was. The line went quiet for a long moment. If you don't love him anymore, have the decency to leave him properly. Don't sneak around behind his back like a coward. She hung up before I could respond, but her words followed me to Brady's apartment. When I told him about the conversation, he looked troubled. Maybe she's right. Maybe we should slow down, think about this more carefully. Are you having second thoughts? Panic fluttered in my chest. I'm thinking about Evan. He's going to be devastated when he finds out. He's going to be fine. Better than fine. He'll be free to find someone who actually wants his version of life. Brady pulled me close. And what about us? Where does this lead? Wherever we want it to lead. I kissed him deeply, pushing away thoughts of Megan's questions and Carolyn's accusations. We're not doing anything wrong, Brady. We're choosing happiness over settling. There's nothing wrong with that. But even as I said it, I could see doubt creeping into his eyes. The thrill of the forbidden was intoxicating, but the reality of breaking up a family was starting to weigh on him. I'd have to work harder to keep him focused on us, on what we could have together, instead of letting guilt about Evan cloud his judgment. Some risks were worth taking, and Brady was definitely worth the risk. I just had to make sure he kept believing that too. The envelope was waiting on my desk when I returned from lunch with Brady, looking official and ominous among my usual stack of administrative paperwork. My name was typed across the front in formal lettering, and my stomach dropped before I even opened it. Legal notice of separation and custody petition. The words swam before my eyes as I scanned the document. Evan was filing for legal separation, citing irreconcilable differences and adultery. He was requesting primary custody of Megan, exclusive use of the family home, and a formal division of assets. My hands shook as I read further. He had evidence: phone records, credit card statements, witness testimony, the lunch dates with Brady, the unexplained absences, the hotel charges I thought I'd hidden so carefully. It was all there, documented with the methodical precision that was so typical of Evan. "Everything okay, hun?" Linda from accounting peered over my cubicle wall. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I managed, shoving the papers into my purse. "Just some unexpected news." But I wasn't fine. My mind was racing, trying to figure out how Evan had discovered everything and, more importantly, how he'd found the backbone to actually do something about it. This was the same man who couldn't ask for extra ketchup at restaurants without apologizing. I called Brady immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. Then I tried calling home, but Evan didn't answer either. Panic was setting in now, the careful control I'd maintained over the situation slipping away. When I finally reached Brady 2 hours later, his voice was strained. "Lenore, we need to talk." "Did you know about this? Did you know Evan was filing papers?" "He called me this morning. He knows everything." The bottom dropped out of my world. "What did you tell him?" "I told him the truth. What else could I do? He had evidence, Lenore. Photos of us together, records of our meetings. He laid it all out like a prosecutor building a case." "So you just threw me under the bus?" "I didn't throw anyone anywhere, but I'm not going to lie to a man who's supposed to be my best friend." Brady's voice was getting colder. "Maybe we should have thought about this more carefully before we started." "Before we started? You're the one who pursued me, Brady. You're the one who said I deserved better." "You do deserve better. But maybe this wasn't the way to get it." The call ended with 4 words that gutted me. "I need some time." Brady was gone, retreating into self-preservation, leaving me to face the fallout alone. When I got home, Evan was waiting. The house felt sterile, stripped of warmth. Megan was gone. He sat at the kitchen table with a neat stack of papers. Evidence, I realized, not conversation. "She's at my mother's," he said calmly. "I thought we should talk privately." "Evan, please, we can fix this." He cut me off. "While you were sneaking around with Brady, I was documenting everything. Texts, photos, receipts, even your little speech to your coworkers about how pathetic I am." My own voice played from his phone, venomous and undeniable. "You recorded me?" "It's legal," he said flatly, "and necessary." He pushed the papers toward me. "Sign the separation agreement. I'm filing for custody. You'll get supervised visitation until you prove you're stable. Move out by the end of the month." "This is insane." "No," he said. "It's rational." Then, the final blow. "You have until Friday." Upstairs, I packed in silence. My phone buzzed. Brady again, the final betrayal. I can't do this. He was my friend first. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Evan had the evidence, Brady had the exit, and I had nothing left but a house full of ghosts and the sharp, clean sting of consequences I'd earned all by myself. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and disappointment. I sat beside my lawyer, Margaret Stern, while Evan and his attorney prepared to dismantle what was left of my life. Judge Hawkins was brisk, unsympathetic. Mrs. Vexley, do you dispute the evidence of your affair? I made mistakes, I said, but I'm still a good mother. She raised an eyebrow. Your daughter's statement says otherwise. Then she read it aloud. Megan describing how I yelled, how she preferred her father's quiet house, how she felt safe with him. It was like being gutted in front of strangers. I tried to argue, to explain, but the more I spoke, the worse it sounded. They played recordings of me mocking Evan, showed photos of the dinner where I'd humiliated him. Every word, every image pushed me further from the woman I wanted to believe I was. When the judge delivered her ruling, I already knew. Evan got the house and primary custody. I got supervised visitation every other weekend, pending counseling. In the hallway, Megan hugged me tightly. Will I still see you? She asked. Of course, sweetheart, I said, forcing a smile. Every other weekend. As she walked away hand in hand with Evan, I realized I hadn't just lost a marriage. I'd lost the right to call my life my own. Outside, the sun felt too bright, too honest. For the first time in years, I saw myself clearly, not as a victim, but as the author of my own downfall. And maybe, if I faced that truth, I could finally start over. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.